Assalamualaikum everyone, my name is Farisha and today I'll be presenting an overview of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, where this presentation will cover the key aspect and implication of this foundation legal document of space law. So this treaty consists of 17 articles and it revolves around the ensuring the exploration and use of outer space for the benefit of all mankind. It establishes the general principle governing the activities in outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies. This treaty is considered the fundamental law relating to outer space because it was the first specific treaty to outline the basic principle of international space law. So this principle have been referred to by many subsequent legal instruments and remain largely undisputed. So moving on to the applicability of the treaty, where it is applicable to the activities of state party in the exploration and the use of outer space. These include activities carried by individual state parties as well as those conducted jointly with other states or through intergovernmental organization. For instance, Malaysia's space activity will fall under the treaty purview. Similarly, joint space mission by countries such as UK, USA, and Japan, or collaborative project by European Space Agency are also governed by this treaty. Now, the next slide on the right to explore and use outer space. So, according to Article 1 of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, outer space is the province of all mankind. This means that it should be explored and used for the benefit and in the interest of all countries, irrespective of their level of economic or scientific development, and without any form of discrimination. This treaty ensures freedom of scientific investigation in outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, and mandates that states must facilitate and cooperate with one another in this endeavor. Now I'll be explaining on what is the meaning of province of all mankind. So the term province of all mankind as used in this treaty is not that explicitly defined. However, in the US, Senate Foreign Relations Committee has interpreted it to mean for the benefit of all mankind. This interpretation emphasizes that outer space shall be accessible and its exploration should be used for the collective benefit of humanity. This is to promote international cooperation and equality in space exploration.
As stated in Article 1 of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, the exploration and use of outer space must be for the benefit of all countries. Due to this, there has been discourse about what constitutes as benefit towards all countries. According to Ogun Banwo, there are three conditions that must be met for the outer space exploration and use to benefit all countries. Firstly, its use must be for the maintenance of peace between countries. Second, its use must be for the purpose of enhancing international cooperation amongst countries. And third, the discoveries of the outer space exploration must be shared to the international community. Moving on, according to Article 2 of the treaty, outer space and its celestial bodies are not subject to national appropriation. Therefore, outer space itself and its celestial bodies cannot be owned by any particular country. With reference to Article 2 of the treaty, there have been cases involving the appropriation of outer space, such as the Bogota Declaration and the Yemenis claim. In the Bogota Declaration, the claimants wish to claim the geostationary orbit above their countries as their own, whereas in the Yemenis claim, the claimants claim that they inherited Mars from their ancestors and NASA was trespassing on their property. Nonetheless, both of these claims were dismissed in accordance to Article 2, as outer space cannot be owned by any particular entity. In relation to that, it has been questioned whether this treaty is applicable towards private entities and not only countries. Simply put, although not explicitly mentioned in the treaty, countries take personal responsibility to regulate those under their jurisdiction from acts of appropriation of outer space. An example of this can be seen in the Malaysian Spaceport Act 2022, where all outer space activities are regulated through approved licenses, as seen in Section 16 of the Act.
Moving on to the next topic. What if there's a dispute between two states concerning outer space? Which law then shall be applicable? Well, according to Article 3 of the Outer Space Treaty 1967, the law that should be used if there is a dispute between two states would be international law and not the national legal framework. This can be seen in the Cosmos 954 incident. Cosmos 954 was a Soviet satellite launched in 1977 that contained a nuclear reactor. However, in January 1978, the satellite re entered Earth's atmosphere and disintegrated, scattering radioactive debris over a large area of Canada's Northwest Territories. In this case, the dispute was settled using international law instead of Canada or Soviet law. Moving on to Article 4 of the treaty, it prohibits states parties to place in orbit around the Earth any objects of mass destruction or nuclear weapons or installment of military bases. However, the use of military personnel for any peaceful purposes or military equipment for peaceful exploration is allowed. A perfect example is during the Cold War. The Soviet Union developed a system known as the Fractional Orbital Bombardment System. This system was designed to launch a nuclear warhead into a partial orbit around the Earth, which could then be deorbited to strike a target. Although the Soviet Union conducted tests of the FOBS, the system was never fully operational. The Outer Space Treaty played a role in discouraging the development of such systems. According to Deirdrix Virtue in her book An Introduction to Space Law, peaceful purposes have been interpreted in many ways. Some interpreted it as non aggressive, while others non military. According to Article 5 of this treaty, astronauts from all over the country must provide assistance to one another, whether in outer space or in the territory of another state during emergencies. For example, the Soyuz MS-10 launch abort in 2018. The Soyuz MS-10 was a manned mission intended to transport two crew members to the International Space Station, Russian cosmonaut Alexei Ovchinin and NASA astronaut Nick Hague. About 2 minutes after liftoff, a sensor was damaged, leading to an abnormal separation. This triggered an emergency abort sequence. The capsule landed in Kazakhstan. Despite the Soyuz being a Russian vehicle, the incident underscored the collaborative spirit between Russia and the United States. NASA and Roscosmos communicated and coordinated effectively throughout the emergency.
State responsibility for space activities. For national activities, states are responsible for national space activities by both governmental and non-governmental entities. State must ensure these activities conform to the treaty, and the non-governmental entities' activities require first authorization by the appropriate state and next continuing supervision by the state. Furthermore, for international organization, responsibility for compliance lies with both the international organization and the state parties involved. The liability are states are liable for space object they launch or procure. Liability extend to the object launched from their territory or facility. Jurisdiction and control. State retain jurisdiction and control over space objects and personnel registered under them while in outer space. So now for the implication for state acts. The responsibility scope are state act will be responsible for all space-related activities by its entities. These include governmental bodies, non-governmental organizations, and private individuals. For example, if state act is involved in sending a space object, it must ensure all involved activity and entities are authorized and supervised. It retains liability and control over the object and personnel during the mission. Now I shall talk about the objective of international law. The objective is to regulate the behavior of states and ensure they control their national activity to avoid breaches of obligations. Second, states should establish a national legal framework to regulate space activities of their subject to comply with the Outer Space Treaty. Next, prohibition on contamination. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty talks about states must avoid harmful contamination of outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies. State must prevent adverse changes to Earth environment from extraterrestrial matter, and the preventative measure is state should adopt appropriate measure to prevent harmful contamination And the international consultation are if a state believes its activity or experiment in outer space could interfere with other state, peaceful exploration and use of outer space, the state must undertake appropriate international consultation before proceeding. Obligation of the state. The state must allow other states to observe the flight of their space objects. Next, state must inform the Secretary General of the UN, the public, and the international scientific community about the nature and result of their outer space activities. State must allow representative of other state parties to visit all station, installation, equipment, and space vehicle on the moon and other celestial bodies. For example, in Russia allowed other states and individuals to witness the launch of the Soyuz TMA-2, which carried Malaysia's first astronaut Sheikh Muzaffar Shukr Al-Masri to the International Space Station. The responsibility in the practice are first informing. It is to inform the international and national activities of member states and international organizations in maintaining by the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, which contains input from state about their space activities. Next is the visitation. State Act has a space station either separate from or attached to the International Space Station. It must allow representatives from other states to visit the station. Last but not least, I will talk about the procedure for state to become party to the 1967 Outer Space Treaty. First, the state must have signature and accession, this is open to all states for signature, allow for later accession by states, and did not sign before its entry into force. Next, ratification is subject to ratification by signatory states, and the amendment, the treaty may be amended by the parties. For the withdrawal, a state party may withdraw by giving notice of its withdrawal. Withdrawal take effect 1 year from the date of notification. For example, Malaysia signed the treaty on the 20th January 1967 but has not ratified it. As a result, Malaysia is not technically bound by the treaty's provision. Last but not least, customary international law. Many states consider the Outer Space Treaty to reflect customary international law. The treaty's substantive content effectively binds all states regardless of ratification status. Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties 1969 talks about the Article 38 provide a treaty can be binding on non-parties if it becomes a customary rule of international law. That's all from our group. Thank you.